Well, Supreme City is about New York in the 1920s. Jazz Age New York, F. Scott Fitzgerald New York. It's New York at a pivotal moment in its history when it's moving from an industrial economy to what we would call almost a post-industrial economy, with the development of mass communications, talking movies, radio. Yet it still has all of the old infrastructure of a great industrial city. Tremendous rail service, a great subway system, an internationally known harbor. So these two kind of cities meld and meet here, and there's an explosion of architecture and development. New York experiences in the 1920s the biggest building boom probably in the history of cities. I mean, there are no skyscrapers north of 42nd Street. And by the end of the 1920s, 10 years later, half of New York's skyscrapers are located in Midtown. And that's where the book's centered, right in Midtown. Duke Ellington said about Midtown, nothing happens unless somebody in Midtown presses a button, And we had culture in this country, of course, but with these great transmitting instruments like records and film, okay, talking film, and radio, you can transmit a culture like New York's, which is the center of all this, the nexus of all this. You can transmit that culture to the rest of the country. And so when I interviewed the writer Studs Terkel, who was out in Chicago, I said, "Who's your favorite fighter?" "Jack Dempsey." He said, "We'd shadow punch. We'd listen to the radio, Jack Dempsey, shadow punch. We liked him because he was a slugger. Tunney was kind of a boxer and things like that. Who'd you like in baseball?" "Of course I like the White Sox or the Cubs, whatever. But no, also, it was transfixing." Studs Terkel said, "Follow Babe when he's going for 60. And so baseball just becomes woven truly into the American imagination in the 1920s, when it becomes truly national through New York, I think. And what was fabulous for me about New York is that it's made largely by people who came from somewhere else. So it's an international city, but everybody knows that. But it's also an American city. I hear New Yorkers say, well, New York isn't really America. It's more European than American. But it's quintessentially American in the 20s. It's a great place to study if you're teaching, because you have a concentration of so much of what's going on in the country. Tocqueville said, every American is driven by a hunger to advance, to rise. And you see that in New York City in the 1920s.